Will the April 8th total solar eclipse influence the U.S. markets? Today's March 30th, and what we've seen in the past is we do expect a tremendous increase in volatility based on the eclipse, and also a lack of singular directionality. In other words, it's likely to go strongly in one direction, then strongly in another direction, possibly back and forth 3 times as part of the zigzag nature of these types of events. And the first step will be, we're looking for a little bit of a bounce up into the April 8th through 10th area, which was what we were saying last time. The market's making a minor little top, followed by a decent breakdown from roughly the 8th or 10th to the 22nd through 24th of the month of April. And after that 2-week break, the market should have yet a stronger up move, taking out the all-time highs and continuing until the late part of May, as we have said before. So because we have these dates where there's a high in April and a low late April and a high late May and a deep decline into late July, we have kind of a roadmap for the 18-year cycle and the 28-year cycle and the 12-year cycle. And when they agree with each other so closely, you have to respect the possibility that indeed that's going to be what actually happens. But what's interesting, now is we have a couple of eclipses, and this particular eclipse on the 8th, April 8th, is a rare kind of a thing because the shadow of the eclipse, the path, they call it the path of totality, the totalness, it's 100% total eclipse, that path goes right across the United States, kind of comes through Texas and it goes on a diagonal, winds up going through the northern part of New York, even into Maine.
So how many times has this happened, the total solar eclipse, that the U.S. is affected by the total solar eclipse? We oftentimes see something, maybe it happens in another part of the world, but not so rarely do we get it across the U.S., although we did back in 2017 or so.
Yeah.
How many times has that happened, and has there been an effect on the markets during those times?
Yeah, well, this particular thing where the shadow goes across the U.S. Has only happened 6 times since the country's been around, since 1776. The first one was in like 1780, and then there were a couple in the late 1800s. But as far as the market data, which we only have back to 1885 on a short-term basis, there were only 3 of those events. And so we have a limited, set of choices to look at, but the events seem to have fairly meaningful triggers for the market. And the markets tend to move fast and they tend to increase volatility around these eclipses.
So not necessarily do they automatically go up or down.
Right.
Do they change direction?
A lot of times they change direction from where they were going before, and sometimes they do a zigzag kind of thing. They go against the original direction and then they go back in the same direction. They can be very difficult to, there's no uniform, reliable way that they always behave. But what they do have in common, if you look at the examples, and we have quite a few examples we're going to show you, the market moves a lot. And so it tends to create a lot of volatility.
Out of those 3 before today, is that 3 before today? This will be the 4th?
Yeah.
So the 3 before today that we have record on with the stock market, were they in any relationship similar astrologically to what this one is going to be?
Well, what you can look at is like, where are the sun and the moon in terms of what sign are they placed in, None of the 3 that happened, one was in 2017, one was, the one before that was in 1979, the one before that was in 1970. And none of those 3 are directly in line with the present position of Rahu, of the nodes right now. And what does that mean? Last time we spent a lot of time talking about Rahu and Ketu and the nodes. Why we said that?
Yeah.
They cause eclipses. That's what the purpose, that's what the nodes are known for. Something has to create the alignment with the sun and the moon and the earth so that the light of the shadow of the moon or the shadow of the earth is interfering with a normal perception, And that's what's happening this time, is that Rahu and Ketu are in the sign of, Rahu is in Pisces and Ketu is in Virgo. But none of the other ones that were total solar happened in the same place. So you can't compare like exactly what happened. But each time what did happen is that you had, as I said, you had a really dramatic kind of action over the next few months. Oh, there's another thing that seems to happen on eclipses, and this is an astrological thing. When markets begin a move, when the starting point of a move tends to be on an eclipse, they usually retrace to the starting point at some point within 6 months or a year. And so here's several examples where, you get this really big move down in 1970, and then within 6 months it's completely retraced. It goes all the way back up. And then in 1979 it had a big move up, and then within 6 months it came back and retested the same spot. And then even in 2017, when you had this, the most recent one was August of 2017, you had a dramatic straight up rally for a number of months. It came back down 6 months later, and it retested about a year later, and it retested the exact spot and then went back up again.
You've been speaking about the market going down after for a while after the 1st of April. Now you're speaking going down as of May, but then you're saying it's going back up. So you weren't just looking at the effect of the eclipse at that point. You were looking at other things. So
Right.
There's multiple things kind of implying that it will go down, come back up to the same point and or above.
Well, the most likely scenario is that if you look at it on balance, we've been looking for a high in early April, maybe around the 8th or 10th of April, and then a sharp break. And that would last a week, maybe 2 weeks, until the 24th. And that's probably the case, followed by even a bigger move up into May 23rd, into the late part of May. So this whole down-up thing, that is kind of the effect of this eclipse. But the retracement would be the aftermath of all these eclipses, which it comes all the way back down, perhaps lower than it started at this April 24th low. So first there's a sharp down, then a bigger up, and then starting in June, July, we get a big, big down move that takes out the whole up move that happened between now and May 23rd. So when there are a lot of planets that are nearby the nodes, like you may have the sun near, the north node and Venus near the south node, you find the market go into trading ranges. That it tends to shoot up in one direction and then shoot back down in the other direction, as long as a lot of planets are around the nodes. It's almost like a zero-sum game that's being played, where the market's not really going to progress until some planets get away from the nodes, And right at the moment, there's quite a few planets that are influenced by the nodes, which tends to create this jagged, what you might say, zero-sum type thing, where so it shoots all the way up and then later it shoots all the way down. Then it takes off yet again to the upside later in the year after the late July low. Okay.
Well, last time you mentioned that you expected about a week of not going very far, not kind of.
Yeah.
And that happened?
A topping pattern. Well, so far it went down a little bit and then up a little bit. It's done that so far.
So that was close to the lunar eclipse.
Right.
The solar eclipse, do you think more or less from that?
Yeah, no, I think what will happen is it went down from like on the 25th and 26th, it went down a little bit. Then the 26th, it made a low, went up into the 28th, and then there's a weekend, and the 29th, the market's closed. So on Monday, I think the market may come down a little bit early in the week, and then start another rally up into the 8th or 10th of April. And all of that is just a bunch of noise. It's not going to make huge progress, although it could rally a few days. It's not it's not a dramatic move. It's just maybe it'll go a little bit higher than it had been. And then a sharp break, after the eclipse, after the 8th, we have this sharp break, and that goes down a couple of weeks. It's still not a huge dramatic thing, although it's more volatile than it's been lately. Then a nice rally, strong rally, up into May 23rd or 23rd or 4th. And then even a bigger decline that starts in May and goes all the way to the late part of July. And it's even possible the market's going to sit there until July 4th weekend or something, and then fall apart all in July,
Oh, so now you're thinking the possibility of not falling until July instead of...
Well, it could make the highest high May 23rd and go down a little, up a little, and just sit around for a month. And then at the end of June, it has a reversal that means something. It has a big breakdown.
So
it did it in 1996.
All at once instead of over the whole time.
It's not a gradual kind of a thing,
necessarily.
Yeah. It could do it that way. But the point is you're going to get a lot of swings in opposite directions. Okay, a little thing down in April, a bigger one up into May, bigger one down into July, even a bigger one up after July into next year. So it's like a crazy, swinging market. And it winds up higher later.
But that's how traders can make money. If it's
a lot of money. It'll heat up, it'll get more exciting and more volatile, and seemingly more negative when it's negative and more positive when it's positive, and it means nothing. All of it's ultimately going to go up in the longer period, the longer time frame.
Are there any mathematical aspects to this whole thing, as away from astrology and just to mathematics?
Yeah, we always look at it from the point of view of mathematics first. We find the cycles without the use of the planetary positions, based upon a system that works very well to locate what chunks of history are repeating. We find those patterns and we project them forward and show what they will do going into the future, and then use them. But now we're kind of enriching the story by recognizing that the planetary influences they're associated with the triggers for various subperiods, for various moves in the middle of those patterns. It explains where they're coming from, where these little up moves and down moves are coming from, And not that the planets are necessarily causing the thing. Some people think that. But the mathematics is being unwound. It's being realized. It's being activated by these planets that are triggering these events as they move.